I think for a long time the Jade Falcons had lost that way. But it is my belief, I hope, that we are coming back. Clan Jade Falcon is not known for its interest in art and performances, but I think that might have been a mistake. What are we fighting to protect, if not the purest forms of expression of the soul of humanity? Today we're going to do something a little different and discuss the latest BattleTech novel, Without Question, by Brian Young. It's set in the year 3152, providing the reader with more insight into what happened to the Jade Falcons left behind following Malvina Hazen's mad dash toward Terra. But before we get too far into those events and what I thought about the book overall, we need to have a couple of clarifications. The first is that I am not an unbiased observer. As a longtime fan of Clan Jade Falcon and their wacky antics over the decades, I have a vested interest in seeing the clan continue to exist outside of those few survivors who took the knee to Alaric on Terra. That is the lens I look through while reading this story, so keep that in mind, especially as you hear other takes on the book from reviewers who might have other perspectives. Isn't it nice to have some options in that respect? The second thing that must be noted is that the book was given to me for early preview and review by the author. As much as I will do my best to compartmentalize that fact, it does need to be said. It won't prevent me from providing my honest opinions about the novel. Finally, this video is going to be largely spoiler-free concerning specific events from the book's twists and turns. For a more exhaustive explanation of the book's contents, there are probably going to be other options out there. Or you could, just buy and read the book. If you have not yet read A Question of Survival, there will be spoilers for that, so you have been adequately warned. So let's get into what Without Question is and what it isn't. The events covered in the novel dovetail with Young's previous novel, A Question of Survival. G.E. Chistu and his band of ragtag Jade Falcons have returned from the Russell Hague Dominion with dozens of young future warriors from the Bears Sibcos. Now on Sudaten, Chistu has to somehow forge what they have into a functional clan that can resist the looming dangers that seem to be pressing in on all angles. From the Alina Mercantile League to the Hell's Horses and even the floundering Illyran Commonwealth, it seems that everyone wants a piece of the former Falcon occupation zone. While this is the setting at the 10,000-foot level, the real challenge for Chistu and the other Jade Falcons is one of a crisis of identity. They're trying to survive in an inner sphere traumatized by the actions of Malvina Hazen, and over again their efforts are stymied by her lingering legacy. Brian Young's biggest strength, in my humbled opinion, is the development of characters, and it really shows as the reader of Without Question is introduced to a few new Falcons and a few non-Falcons, as well as getting to know some of the characters from previous novels. A particular standout to me is the young mech warrior Alexis, who has gone from street rat thief in the Russell Hague Dominion to Jade Falcon mech warrior after her Sibco was won in the Trial of Possession. Over the course of the novel, Alexis has the opportunity to step up and find the family she's been longing for her whole life, even if the trials and tribulations include some heavy heartbreak as well. She is one of those characters that you can easily see going off and having her own adventure in future novels. There are some other interesting characters as well, including some that return from the previous novel, as well as ones including an older Falcon who is faced with the challenge of reintegrating into the new Clan Jade Falcon that G.E. Chistu is building. Speaking of our curly-haired Khan, G.E. Chistu has his plate full in Without Question. Wrangling his ragtag group of abandoned Falcons and saving the clan appears improbable for anyone except G.E., who seems to have the sort of irritatingly amiable personality that leaves you wondering how he managed to get you to agree with him after you entered his office ready to wring his neck. He's the Jade Falcon version of a salesman who will slap a mech's foot with his hand and say, "What can I do to get you into this battle mech today?" Throughout this novel, you have the opportunity to see how that strategy plays out with people of varying anger, paranoia, and ulterior motives. Now let's talk about some strengths and challenges, because overall I think that Without Question is a strong novel that does a good job of building a foundation for the Falcons moving into the Ilkline era, and it wraps up a few loose ends from Malvina's reign of terror. As I mentioned before, Brian Young excels at character development and writing dialogue that feels real without becoming tedious with exposition dumps. Where the novel struggles a bit is with action scenes, where sometimes it's difficult to sort out exactly what's going on, and a few times things just really don't make sense from a tactical point of view. A few times I had to reread sections carefully to make sure I had a good mental image of who was where and doing what. In one of the battles, a major character takes a risky action involving a Balius mech, which is downright baffling in the context of a high-stakes operation with a small margin for error. With that being said, it's largely quibbling on my part, and if I was given the choice between a BattleTech novel with epic battle scenes and lackluster character development, and a novel with solid character development and decent battles, I'll go with option 2 every time. The description of what a PPC does to armor means a whole lot less if you don't care who is on either side of the weapon. Without Question is split into 3 sections, and each has its own feel to it and could almost be seen as their own little mini adventure. This is both a plus and a minus in my opinion. The first 2 sections are strong, and I bought in as GE's Falcons struggle against a couple of significant threats. Unfortunately, by the time we get to the 3rd section, it feels like both the characters and the reader have gone through the gauntlet. The arrival of yet another threat late in the book is one which has left me with conflicting emotions. On the one hand, this threat is an important one that GE must face in order to truly break with the legacy of Malvina Hazen. On the other hand, there is just too much there with this new antagonist to cram into what amounts to half of a third of the novel. The intrigue and subterfuge of this latest threat moves very quickly, and I really wish it had been given more time to breathe in its own separate story. The other events which take place elsewhere coinciding with it in Part 3 could have easily held their own as the last third of this book. My last critique is more of a general concern that I hope GE's Falcons don't lose their arrogant edge. While it's understandable that they've had to temper it a bit out of the need to survive against insurmountable odds, it would be a little disappointing if the new Jade Falcons ended up a smaller version of the Rosselhaig Dominion or some sort of good guy clan. It would be nice to see the Falcons regain some of that swagger once they're back on their feet. GE Chistu has that spark, and if Alexis can gain it as well, it would help to differentiate her from Katie Ferraro from the Fox Patrol. They're both young women who have a lot to learn about the world in which they live, and it's easy to see similarities between their characters across the novels. Giving Alexis that Jade Falcon hardness and ego over some time would really help set her apart. Part of the reason why I bring this up is because I actually had to go back in this script to an earlier paragraph because I had written Katie instead of Alexis several times over. The 2 names were actually flipped in my aging and unreliable brain. One other thing I appreciated while reading this was the fact that Brian Young went out of his way to give some of the lesser-known battle mechs some attention. I don't know about you, but I'm just about tapped out of patience with characters piloting some variation of Timberwolf. Quite a few of the newer mechs make an appearance in the novel, including the Ion Sparrow, which is one of my favorite Ilklan-era Jade Falcon battle mechs. Now, how those Ion Sparrows show up and are used in the story is a little bit of a different discussion. Still, I'm glad they're in the novel. Overall, Without Question is a strong BattleTech book. If you're a fan of the Jade Falcons and want to see what they're up to in the Ilklan era, it and Question of Survival are must-reads. If you are lukewarm on the Falcons or hate their guts, there's not a whole lot here for you. If you're a fan of the Hell's Horses, well, you might appreciate that there's a Balius in the novel. Otherwise, you may not be too happy. Now, if I were to give a book an overall rating, I would give it 3 Ion Sparrows, 2 Turkinas, and a Shrike. Now, if I can just convince Brian Young to trade Daniel off to the Hell's Horses in exchange for a case of whiskey. Do I recommend this book? Absolutely. It's well written and does a good job of fleshing out some of what is going on in the hinterlands headed into 3052. Without Question is available for purchase as of today on the CGO website and major online booksellers. If you want a signed copy, I've included a link to Brian Young's website in the video notes below. Thank you for putting up with my nonsense, and feel free to come back and tell me I'm totally wrong about everything in this video once you've read the novel yourself. One more big thanks to Brian Young for sending me a copy to read and review. It was very much worth the time, and long live Clan Jade Falcon. Greenbird strong. If you enjoyed this video and want to increase your chances of seeing more nonsense from me in the future, don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button. Until we meet again, take care, and please go make the world a slightly better place today and tomorrow.